2015 Smith Fellowship presentation. My name is Kevin Robb, and I'm the Associate Vice President for Mission and Ministry. I am the chair of the Smith Fellowship Selection Committee and the director of the program. And on off days, I'm also the associate treasurer of the college. I deal with the sublime and the ridiculous, and it varies day to day which is which. We were very blessed this past summer to have 10 Smith Fellows in 7 different venues, Catholic and Dominican venues, around the world. And including them, over 7 summers, we have had a total of 53 Smith Fellows in 18 different Catholic and Dominican venues around the world. All this has been made possible through the generosity of principally former members and current members of the Board of Trustees. Also other benefactors, such as the Mitchells right here, who support us every year, and Bill and Emily O'Leary, who will be walking in a minute. They also support us every year. Actually, over 7 summers, we have spent approximately $250,000 on Smith Fellowships. And every cent of that has been donated to the college. And we're extremely grateful. Another donor is Heidi Kenny in the back row there. A current member of the Board of Trustees, as is Bill O'Leary coming in. Heidi has contributed to the program, as has her aunt, Veronica Kenny Farrell. So this is only possible because of the generosity of a lot of people. Now, 3 Smith Fellows from the summer of 2015 are going to be presenting this afternoon. First will be Molly O'Leary, who went to Springs, South Africa this summer. These are the O'Learys coming in. No, that's all right. We just gave you a great, we gave you credit. No, credit where it's due. Molly O'Leary went to Springs, South Africa this past summer. She had a traveling companion, Seth Pinches, who couldn't be with us this afternoon. So Molly will share with us their experiences in Springs, South Africa. And then presenting will be Emma Beer and Janine Justiniano. And they went to the Solomon Islands with a brief stopover at the beginning and the end in Sydney, Australia. The Solomon Islands is a very popular venue simply because the Bishop of Auki on Malaita Island in the Solomon Islands is Bishop Chris Cardone, a member of the class of 1980, a classmate of Father Shanley. Chris went off as a young priest. He was loaned to the province of Australia, and they had a mission in the Solomon Islands, and that's where he went. And within a few years, he was an auxiliary bishop, and then they gave him his own diocese. And he's one of the few bishops in the world whom you will see pictured, and you'll see it pictured. He'll be in his shorts and T-shirts and flip-flops. Now, he tends not to put the mitre on with that outfit, but he's definitely a bishop of the people. We have some former Smith Fellows here. We have Jenna Donahue over here in the second row. She went to Springs in the summer of 2014. So she's here rooting Molly on. In the back, and this next to the last row here, we have two young ladies who look a lot alike. They are identical twins. Molly and Carrie, Molly in the white, Carrie in the gray, O'Donoghue. And 1 year, Molly went to Haiti as a Smith Fellow. And the following year, what, 2 years ago now? 2 years. 2 years. But, oh, yeah, it was, yeah, just right, just the summer of 2014. So Molly went to Haiti in 2013. Carrie went to the Solomon Islands in 2014. So we're very blessed. If Emma Beer and Janine Justiniano can't remember what they did in the Solomon Islands, Kelly will be able to take care of it. And if Molly can't quite remember what happened in South Africa, Jenna can fill in. But we're blessed to have these Smith Fellows around campus for a while, or in the case of the O'Donoghue twins, coming back after their graduation. Part of the Smith Fellowship program is that our fellows go off for these experiences with Dominican friars and Dominican sisters all over the world, and then they come back and they share their experiences with the current Providence College community. And they are meant to act as leaven or yeast within the community. They've gone forth from here as ambassadors in service of Christ in the Dominican tradition, and then they come back and tell the story. And most remarkably now, we have former Smith Fellows who are taking a gap year or close to a year, and they're going back to their Smith Fellowship venues to give, a portion of their life before they go off to become doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs. They go off. We have Ryan Frazier, who went to the Solomons with Carrie. He wants to be a doctor. He's put off medical school for a year. He's back in the Solomon Islands teaching in a rather remote school, working for Bishop Chris. We have Claire Carroll, who also went to the Solomon Islands, and she's negotiating a year in the Solomons with Bishop Chris. We have Emily La Battaglia, who went to an orphanage in the Philippines, summer of 2014. She's just graduated, classmate of the O'Donoghues. She's negotiating to return to that orphanage in the Philippines for a year of service. So the Smith Fellowship program acts as leaven in their lives, and then they act as leaven in the lives of the PC community and back in their venues. I'm very proud of our Smith Fellows. I've been part of the program from its inception in the fall of 2008. They've been a delight, and I've just always been so overjoyed when they come back and tell their stories. And so now Molly is going to take us on a little tour of the Dominican Foundation, the South African Dominican Friars, in Springs, South Africa, which isn't too far from Johannesburg. Molly?
Hi, everyone. Yes, so I'm going to be telling you about the 6 weeks that me and Seth spent in Springs, South Africa this summer. And I'm a little nervous, but we'll get through it together. And 2 weeks ago, I got to present with Seth for a lot of students. here on campus, and I had all these note pages and flashcards and things, and I think it made me more nervous and distracted me. So today I just decided I'm gonna just go based on the pictures and really try to tell you the story just from speaking from the heart, as corny as that sounds. But if there is anything that you want more explanation on, or if I'm getting nervous and talking really quickly, or if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt at any time. Can you see? You're good, okay. Okay, so first of all, before I even left for South Africa, I decided I really wanted to raise some money to take with me to Springs, to be able to possibly purchase music instruments or donate the money to the organization in whatever ways that they needed to help the children there. And also just to raise awareness about the children there that are in need, and to bring my family and friends together. So it was really cool because my application to go to Springs was about how I really wanted to use music to overcome, even if there was a language barrier, you can use music to overcome that and to communicate with the children and to play with them and just share lots of laughs. And then before I left, I got to use music to bring all my family and friends together. So I had 6 benefit shows all around the area. I live in New Bedford, Massachusetts, so it was really cool to use some of the venues there that I had grown up playing at since I was like 10 years old. And then I also had a show on campus in McPhail's with the 1030 Mass Choir, so that was a lot of fun. And we ended up raising $2,700, and I was able to take that over with me, and we bought like hula hoops, games, a volleyball net. That was a really big hit. One family that I knew donated toy instruments, so I was able to ship them over there. And but in addition to the money, I think it was just like bringing my family and friends together before I left, and just seeing like how like loved I was an amazing experience. And then because I had set it up before while I was over there, so many people were following my blog and like sending me messages every day and just really giving me the support that I needed. So that was that. And then, okay, so this is taking off. I think I left May 26th or May 27th, which is great because it was right after my mom's birthday, so I got to celebrate her birthday with her. And I was very, very nervous, more nervous than I am right now. It was my first time leaving the country, and so first we left Boston, and then we got to Munich, Germany, where we had a 10-hour layover. So Seth and I decided that we were going to try to see some of Germany while we were there, and it was beautiful. It was so amazing. And also, crazy enough, while I was there in the airport, I ran into my cousin, who's right there on the right, completely by accident. I swear, it was like when that happened, we did like 5 double takes. It was like we like couldn't believe it. We were like, it was amazing. It was one of the most comforting experiences of my life, seeing family so far away in Germany. And the story of why he was there is just confusing. I'm not even going to explain it, but but yeah. So that was awesome. And it when I saw him, I just felt like it was definitely a sign from God that everything's going to be okay, and that I was definitely meant to be going on this journey. Okay. So in Springs, we stayed with 4 Dominicans, and they are such characters. I fell in love with these priests. They are such amazing, dedicated human beings, and one of the coolest experiences of this trip was just being fully immersed in their lives as Dominicans for over 6 weeks, and seeing how much work they put into helping the people that they serve. And Father Lewis, for example, on the bottom, he is quite something else. He's so funny. He's just so full of energy and wants to help people so much. And he serves at least, on Sundays, we would go to Mass with him sometimes, which meant going to 3 different Masses, spoken in 5 different languages, and they were each 3 hours long. So it was quite an experience, but it was so much fun. And then above Father Lewis is Brother Dominic, who was our main host, and he's awesome. I'm going to talk about him in a few slides. And then from there is Father Raphael, and he took us to Soweto one weekend where we learned so much about the history of South Africa and the struggles that they had been through in the apartheid and so much of the background, and it was a really eye-opening experience. And then to the right is Father Brian, and he was the priest for the church that was attached to the Dominican house that we stayed at, and there was actually a very big Portuguese community that went to that church, so that was cool because my mom and my aunt who are here are both 100% Portuguese, and the little ladies at the church really loved me because I was Portuguese, so that was fun. Okay, so these are pictures from the plot, we called it, which me and Seth and I did the majority of our service every day. We would go with Brother Dominic to St. Martin's. And St. Martin's is an organization that it serves 3 main townships, or 4 actually. The 2 main ones are Kwazenzele and Kwatema, and then it also served Chabuff and Vetcom. But we mainly worked and did home visits to Kwatema and Kwazenzele. And it took me so long to learn how to pronounce those names. They would make fun of me so much because I couldn't say them. But so sometimes, like a typical day would be waking up, we would go with Brother Dominic, pick up a lot of the board members and the caregivers because they don't have transportation. And then we would go to the banks, which would take so long. It was crazy to see all the work that goes into trying to make an organization like this work and help people in need. Go to the banks, go to social development, go to the townships, collect food parcels from the warehouses, go distribute the food parcels to once a month. We would do this, and then that would be those people's food for the entire month. And when you looked at it, it just didn't seem like a lot of food for them to survive on. And they were very, very thankful for that food. And then after school, the kids would come to the plot until about 5 or 6 p.m., and we would play games with them. I got to bring my guitar, which is over there, which they all signed for me. Some of them wrote their phone numbers on it, which I can't call, but that's okay. They wrote "South Africa loves you." They just filled that guitar with so much love. It was a very beautiful experience for me to be able to take music over there. And from day one, they asked me to learn some Bob Marley tunes, so I learned a lot of those, some Shakira tunes, and we just had so much fun through music. And then they tried to teach me how to dance. That didn't work out too well, but it made them laugh. And then also we would try to help the cooks out in the kitchen because they spend all day making a huge meal for the kids. So that way when they got to the plot, they would have that meal because that was really the only food that they got all day, or at least the one main big meal. And the kids were always so thankful for that. Actually, that was one of my favorite experiences, was seeing them gathered at the little dining hall, and they would just wait so patiently for that food, and they were very thankful for it. And then that picture on the bottom right is pap and chicken feet, which they love, and it's a delicacy in South Africa, and I respect that, but I couldn't eat it. They tried to make me eat it, but I tried some other things. I tried mopani worms, which weren't that bad, but I did not take the chicken feet. And these are some more pictures from the plot. Up on the top were the hula hoops. And wow, I think when I was a kid, I would be entertained by a hula hoop for maybe 10 minutes, and then I'd be done with it. And they were entertained the entire 6 weeks with those hula hoops, doing the most creative things with them too. It's hard to explain, but yeah, they were very thankful for those. And then Seth set up the volleyball net. We had one post that he and some kids dug a hole into and made it very secure, and then they attached the other one to a tree. And that was a huge hit. It was awesome to see the caregivers and the kids coming together and organizing games. And then on the other side, Seth bought some little toy cars, and then he also bought some little animals, and it was really cool because he got to use the animals to teach the kids all the names of them, which they didn't know before, and they had so much fun with that. That was really awesome. And this is just a video of me singing Bob Marley with the kids. I don't know if the volume is going to work. I can start it over. This is Don't Worry About a Thing by Bob Marley. And this little boy right here was one of my favorites. I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but he just came with so much energy. And he, every time I brought my guitar in my back, he didn't know much English, but he would be like, guitar, guitar. And he was the best dancer by far. He ended up winning the dance competition on our last day there, and I gave him my Harry Potter hat as the prize, which was my favorite hat, but it's okay. He deserved it. And then this little boy is also a very, very good, passionate, emotional dancer. I showed my roommates in the back over there this video the other day, and they told me I should put it in there. So, yes, I hope you enjoy this. It's pretty funny. Yeah, their love of dancing was just absolutely beautiful. And also, with the funds that I had raised, we were also able to buy a radio for them, which is really cool because the caregivers would bring some traditional South African music, and then I bought some like now 93s or whatever, with some American songs, and we had an awesome time with all different sorts of music. And then for our last day, when we had our going away party, Jenna Donahue, who's over there, who went the summer before me and helped me so much in applying to this amazing program, she gave me the idea to make a presentation of all the pictures and videos I had taken to display for the kids. So I was able to me and Seth made this PowerPoint and gathered everyone in the little dining hall and put it up on the wall. And oh my goodness, this room was like vibrating with laughter. Like they had never before, the summer before, they remembered that Jenna did it for them, and then before Jenna had done it, they had never seen themselves on screen like that. So there was lots of laughs. This is just a short clip of that. I got some very embarrassing pictures and videos of the caregivers, so they thought that was very funny. And then in addition to going to St. Martin's, Seth and I also got to do a few other things that were very amazing experiences for me. Up in the top right was a day that we worked with the women, the Portuguese ladies from the church, and we helped them run their soup kitchen. On the bottom right is me and Bartholomew, who is a man that I met when I would go with some of the Dominicans to the retirement home. And I also got to bring my guitar with me then and play music for them. And Bartholomew also told me before I left him, he said, if there's one thing that you learn from today or that you learn in life, just never lose your sense of humor, because if you can always stay laughing, then you'll be able to get through everything. So I remember that from Bartholomew. And then on the left side are pictures from a day when we went with the women from the church to a center called the Vida Nova Center. And they serve about over 100 clients or patients with cerebral palsy. And that was an incredible experience to see how much care they put into making sure that those people get the best quality of life possible. They had a gym, they had arts and crafts, they had a pool where they would do their physical therapy with them. That bottom picture was a dark room where they would have all different sensations, like things to stimulate their senses. They would have lights and sounds. And it was amazing to see how much the people there cared about those patients with cerebral palsy. Most of them were just left on the side of the road, unfortunately, by their parents, because their parents couldn't afford to care for people with the cerebral palsy. So they would take them in and take care of them. And really, it would just be like a 24-hour thing of making sure that they can feed, get enough nutrition, and still making sure that they have the best quality of life possible. And then these are pictures from the home visits, which was also one of my favorite parts of the experience. I'm a social work major, and these home visits were the most eye-opening experience of my life, by far. We would go with the caregivers into the townships, for example, in Kwazenzele and Kotema. And it was definitely scary and out of my comfort zone, but I'm so happy that I pushed myself and went, because hearing their stories was just one of the greatest experiences ever. It's very hard to put it into words, but it was frustrating at first in the first 2 weeks, for example, because I really just wanted to help all these people so much, and I was frustrated that I couldn't make changes in the way that I wanted to. But then I realized that so many of the people here just wanted to be listened to, and they just wanted to tell their stories, tell their struggles, and just actually be treated as human beings. And I had an experience like that with the woman up in the top left. She was a mother from Zimbabwe, and because she had just come from Zimbabwe recently and didn't have any forms of identification, she couldn't get a job, so she was struggling a lot to take care of her 3 children. And I listened to her story, and it was very emotional. And then before I left, she looked at me, and I thought maybe she was going to ask for money or anything, which I totally understand because she needed it desperately. But instead, she just asked me to share her story with you guys when I got back to America. She just said, tell them my story, show them my picture, just so that they know that I exist and I'm struggling and I'm fighting so hard for my children. So I just wanted to share her story with you guys. And then, okay, sorry. So I shared her story in my last presentation, and then I realized since 2 weeks ago that there were a few more people that I just wanted to tell you guys about. So here are a few of the many stories that I heard in South Africa. So this is Tabo. He was the little boy that I pointed out in the video before. And he, it's funny because I remember waking up every morning and thinking like, okay, God, like just let me like be a light for these kids today. Let me like bring them happiness. But this little boy brought me so much happiness. It was incredible. So every day when I would bring my guitar, he would, sorry. Okay, I'm good. Sorry. This little boy just means so much to me. And he would just come and dance and just be so happy just for music. And I wear this bracelet that my aunt gave me when I came back now. And it has all the characters of the Lion King on it because there was this day when Tabo got really sick. And he's an orphan himself, and I could tell that he just really needed someone to hold him and take care of him. So I took care of him all day, and I read him Lion King, which he loved. And then also that day, like 5 other boys came up to me, and they were like, "I'm really sick too, take care of me." And, and at first I was like, "Oh my goodness, like everyone's getting sick, this is so bad." And then I realized, and then clearly I'm not a doctor, I'm such a social work major, and then I realized, oh wait, they're not sick, they just really want me to hold them too and to read to them. Which was also very sad, but so I did, there's a picture later that I'll show you of me with all these little kids around me, and I'm reading The Lion King to them, and that just made me so thankful for my family too. I remember freshman year when I got really sick and my dad came and picked me up, and he took care of me for an entire week straight, and made me chicken soup and just was there with me when I just really needed someone to take care of me. And these kids don't have that every day, so getting to be that for Tabo, even just for one day, meant a lot to me. This is Brother Dominic. I'm sure Jenna can agree with me that he is just something else. Brother Dominic is an incredible person. He's very forgetful and very weird, but in a great way. He is so dedicated to St. Martin's and to getting the people there as much help they need. And for me, as I was getting more immersed in the organization there in Springs, I would get confused sometimes because sometimes, not very often, but sometimes people in the community had some negative reactions toward him. And then I realized later that it was because of the xenophobia tensions there, which is another complicated issue, but because he's from Zimbabwe, some South Africans have hostile relations with people from Zimbabwe. So for me, it was frustrating to see him help people so much, but then not receive the thanks back. But then one day he told me his story in how he grew up as an orphan and was bouncing back and forth between different homes all the time, and how because of his experience, he just wanted to help these kids as much as possible. And his story was also very amazing. This is Magdalene, who is a caregiver that I met, and she was also another amazing person. Her parents had both passed away from HIV, and she just shared with me one day her story and how she had to step up and provide for her family. And because of that, she really wants to be a social worker herself. And so she had a lot of impact on me. And then this is Marika, who helped us set up a lot of the exciting things we got to do. We got to go to Kruger in Cape Town, and but she also had a story herself. Her husband passed away from cancer right after her daughter was born, but her perseverance was incredible, and like her love of people. She was like my mom when I was there, so I'm very thankful for her. Very thankful. So I think I'm going over on my time a lot, so I'm sorry. I'm going to try to wrap things up really quickly. But these are pictures from Kruger and Cape Town, and also my elephant. And this was me on an elephant. And then that picture on the left was me, what I was talking about when I was with Tabo, and I got to read The Lion King to them. And then this was a little girl's thank you speech. I don't know if I have time to play it. Okay, sorry.
down to my children. I want to say that keep it up, keep doing this. Don't end up here. We wish you a good journey. Travel safety. Please, God bless them. As our children and as us children and our mother beauty, we give you both our blessings.
So she wrote that with one of the caregivers, Beauty, and I could tell when she was like struggling with her English, but she afterwards she just talked to me more as well and just thanked me so much for everything. And that day was amazing. The kids were just so thankful, but really what got me through it was all the emails that and like love and support that you guys sent me the entire time I was there. And I'm not going to read all this, but Mr. Bossi was my teacher in high school who sent me a lot of things. And like on the bottom one day, I emailed him when I was very sad and feeling very frustrated, and he just said, "Molly, you're strong. Your tears are not a weakness. They are the outpouring of frustration, anger, in helplessness. You have nothing, and I mean nothing to be embarrassed about. I'm so proud of you and all you have done." And really what I just want to end on is just thanking all of you guys so much for all that you did for me. I wouldn't have been able to do any of this if it wasn't for you guys. Thank you. I have pictures of Patrick, Shannon, my friend Lizzie, who came from home to see me today, my roommates, 10:30 Mass Choir, and then all my family, who's also here today. So that's it. I just want to say thank you so much. And also, Father Rob pointed out the benefactors here, the O'Learys, the Mitchells, and then Heidi in the back. I cannot begin to explain to you how much of a difference this experience has had in my life. I'm already looking into traveling more and trying to help people all over the world, and you guys made me realize that I can't do that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Molly. When our gathering is over at the doors, someone will hand you a 2-page handout. It's called The Power of Storytelling by Molly O'Leary. And it was her final written reflection after her return to New Bedford following her time in South Africa. And I find it to be a very moving statement from a Smith Fellow. And so I printed it for all of you to take home and meditate upon. I'm now going to ask Emma Beer and Janine Justiniano to take us to the Solomon Islands. Okay. You get the one off.
Don't look. These are the little kids singing at the Mass. They were about 3 to 5, 6 years old, the majority of the population, and they have extremely loud voices. Okay. So, hello everyone. I am Janine Justiniano. I am a bio-major senior, and with Emma here, we both went to the Solomon Islands this past summer. We stopped by Sydney, Australia, and it was probably one of the best summers of our lives. It's off.
Is this on? Yeah. So I'm Emma. I'm also a senior. I'm a biology major. I'm from Massachusetts. So as Janine said, we spent 1 week in Sydney, Australia, and 5 weeks in the Solomon Islands. We undertook service for and with the people there, and along the way we got to experience the Dominican tradition that we know so well from Providence College, but all the way on the other side of the world. And when I say the other side of the world, we really mean it.
So we first got interested in this program through friends of ours. We have had a lot of our friends already go on a Smith Fellowship experience, and three of our friends actually went to the Solomon Islands in the past few years. They were great people to talk to and get advice from through the whole application process, and so we really thank them.
Right. So we began our process a year ago, or over a year ago at this point, by talking to the previous Smith Fellows, and then from there we began communicating with the team in Australia. There's a Dominican sister there, Sister Rosemary Kin, who was sort of our main contact. She's the woman third from the right up there. So she helped us coordinate with Bishop Chris and the people in the Solomons to arrange for our homestay, both in Sydney and in the Solomons, make sure we had all the details worked out. The ladies there also helped prepare us with their wisdom and their insights. Many of them had been to the Solomons before, so they helped us get ready. And they also showed us around the city of Sydney, so we got to explore one of the most beautiful cities in the world along the way.
So they were the ones that helped us continue our journey onto the Solomon Islands. We took a flight from Brisbane to Honiara. Honiara is right over here. It's on it's in the Guadalcanal Island in the Solomon Islands. It is the capital, and here you can see the Solomon Island flag. The blue, it represents the ocean. The green represents the land. The yellow represents the coastline, which most of the Solomon Islanders are fishermen, so the ocean and living near the coast are very important to them.
So we got off the plane in Honiara, Janine and I, our first time in the Solomon Islands. We're nervous. We had just gone through customs and our first sort of experience with the culture. We walk out into a big crowd of people. We're the only Americans there, very different looking than everybody else. We're nervous, sort of looking around, what do we do? Looking into the crowds, and we see these two women with big Dominican crosses around their necks, and we're like, we're home, we're safe. And we were greeted by Sister Teresia and Sister Saniela, and they took us on sort of an adventure through Honiara that day one, and then back to their homes. There's two different convents there in Honiara. And this was our first experience with the culture of hospitality that's in the Solomon Islands. We had a huge welcome feast and a goodbye feast, complete with music, an immense amount of food. We tried to make food for them. We were like, okay, we'll cook dinner with them. So we made...
we made salpicón. It's a Bolivian dish. I remember calling my mom the night right before we cooked for them, asking for the ingredients. What should we get, Mom? Yeah, she's over there in the back.
So we were like, okay, we'll cook this big feast for them, like to show them sort of our gratitude. We bring it over to the second house. They have 4 times the amount of food that we cooked prepared for us. So music was a big part of our first sort of experience with them there.
And so for me specifically, music is a very big part of my life. I also brought my guitar over to the Solomon Islands, and on the very first day that we landed in Honiara, I was already practicing with one of the sisters for the mass that afternoon. So that was, right on the job. These are all of the sisters. They're all wearing blue. They don't wear the white habits because of the high temperatures. It would be too much heat stroke every day probably. And they wear the blue color for Marian reasons.
So as an observer, I watched Janine sort of take part in the musical aspect. So we got there, you brought out your guitar, and you were going to try to teach them. She was going to try to teach them some music, but we had just gotten off. We were kind of jet lagged. She couldn't really remember the chords. So one of the sisters pulls out her guitar, and she's amazing. She just casually starts playing this beautiful song, this incredible voice. All the sisters start taking part, and every single one of them has a beautiful voice. So we had kind of gone into there, we had kind of gone in thinking maybe we'll teach them some things, like sort of show them what we've learned at PC, but like day one, they were already teaching us, and that was sort of indicative of the rest of our experience. You know, we kind of thought we'd go over there and bring a lot, but they gave us so much more than we could give them.
And so we came to our last stop, Auki. That's where Bishop Chris and the other Dominican sisters live. We took a 5-hour ferry over. It was very comfortable. So,
The passengers weren't only humans; there were chickens.
oh yeah, chickens. Everyone was crowded together. It was great.
The first class was actually having chairs to sit on
Yeah.
and
Yep.
having a fan blowing at us, while the rest of the people were all sort of crowded in and standing up. But
So when we arrived on the ferry wharf, it was all very crowded. It was very hectic. We didn't know where to go. We blindly reached out to someone to help us get out of the ferry, and then we realized that it was Bishop Chris holding our hand, and so that was kind of a wow moment for both of us, seeing the bishop in his t-shirt and shorts and Crocs, welcoming us himself and giving us plant necklaces, just very loving.
So this was our home. It was Bishop Chris's community. It's called Fenolama. In their language, it means place of peace, and place of peace it was. So the lower picture is what Bishop called his palace. It's sort of just a little house, sort of minuscule compared to what we have here, but that was actually very, very nice compared to what the rest of the people were living in, but he needed it to do everything that he does. So on the community, we had Bishop Chris, and 2 Dominican sisters, as well as a couple families who lived and worked in the diocese. These little girls were my best friends. So from teaching me how to climb trees to how to really draw a princess well, to like what it means to be a true and loyal friend, these girls were my sisters and my teachers, and they lived right there in the community with us.
So this is Sister Saniela, Bishop Chris, and Sister Loretta. We lived with Sister Sani and Sister Loretta on the Fanoalama community. It was a very small little hut kind of house with only 3 rooms and kitchen and living room all kind of together. Sister Saniela is a student in the high school. She is super smart. She is very talented. She helped me learn many of the songs in the Solomon Islands. She woke up early every morning to prepare for the Monday Mass music. Sister Loretta is the head of the English department at the high school.
And yes, she's holding a machete in that picture.
Yes. It was a Saturday morning and she was gardening with a machete. Yeah, we kind of caught her off guard. She is the craziest character, full of joy and happiness. And then Bishop Chris, who Father Rob introduced earlier and who I'm sure most of you know, graduated in class of 80 here at PC, was part of Friars Club. He has the biggest heart, welcoming everyone at any time and being that sort of guide for them.
So this is the chapel. This is Our Lady of Fanoalama. This was sort of the heart of our home community there. So the chapel is set up just like the priory is here in PC. It's after the Dominican model. So I don't know, whoever's been in here, Father Rob. The pews are set, instead of sort of all facing the altar, they're all facing each other. And the reason behind that is this Dominican idea of everybody in the community is preaching to each other. So as you pray, and take part in the Mass and say evening prayer, it's like a conversation. It's a back and forth. It's preaching to each other, and it wasn't just in Mass that we had that aspect of preaching to each other and being a part of the community and learning from them. And just one huge example of that, every morning, so Mass was at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:10 in the morning, it would be full of high school students, many boys who had run 3 or 4 miles that morning just to make it to Mass. They didn't get extra points from their teachers to go to Mass. They didn't, there was no other incentive other than they just wanted to be there, celebrating the Mass with everyone. So full of high school students. And when we were, just stumbling out of bed early that morning, 3 feet away, they had run and prepared and been excited about it. So we learned a lot from them.
So this is what a typical day looked like for us. We would wake up at 5:45 a.m. with the bell. Bishop Chris rings the bell every morning about maybe 41 times. It was great. Exactly. And so we would go straight into the chapel, be with everyone in the community, have Mass. It was a great way to start our day. And then after Mass, we would go straight back into our little house and have breakfast with the sisters. Toast, 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 peanut butter, toast. It was incredible. One thing that the Solomon Islanders are very dependent on rainwater, and so they need rainwater to drink, to shower, to do anything and everything. And so we had 2 weeks of drought. It was almost scary to a certain point. Each house has a water tank, which I hope you guys see in the far right. And so we were lucky enough to have enough water. We came really close to running out of water, but we were lucky enough to have that sort of access to it. And the high school that was right across the street from Fanua Lama ran out of water multiple times. And Bishop Chris, who has a stream running behind his home, allowed them to go at any time of the day or night to get some water in their water bottles.
Yeah, so Bishop Chris would often allow the students to have access to any resources he had. He would more frequently than not have just high school kids sleeping on the floor in his house or wandering in, stumbling in, looking for breakfast, and he'd accommodate every single one of them. All those boys, he'd run to mass in the morning. He'd have breakfast with them, and in his t-shirt and Crocs. He was very much a priest of the people. So after mass and after breakfast, we might get to talk to him for a little bit, or he would go off to do his work. And we would go off into Auki Town and either visit the markets if we had to help the sisters out, would get food for them and not cook, because the one time we tried to cook, it didn't go over so well. But if we weren't doing that, we were going into the kindies, which are the kindergartens. So 3, 4, 5-year-olds. There were 2 different kindergartens. And they were St. Augustine's and Liliciana, and they were right nearby. Liliciana is a village nearby. We'll talk more about that later.
Yes, so St. Augustine's Kindy is right at it's the St. Augustine's Cathedral Kindy. This is where Bishop Chris kind of works next door. These kids are incredible. They all have uniforms. They have to wear their uniforms to school. The St. Augustine's kindergarten has about maybe 4 teachers for about 160 students, all little kids. It was all in one big room divided by sheets. They were lucky enough to have tables and chairs, but the Liliciana Kindy, which you see in the middle, is a lot more poorer. It's only 1 teacher for the same amount of children, 160. They don't have chairs, they don't have tables, they all sit on the ground. They have 1 blackboard, and they have basically arts and crafts with anything and everything that they can find, which one thing that they found a lot was beer cans.
So the village that this kindy was in is Liliciana. It was a couple kilometers walk from where we stayed. Liliciana is difficult to talk about because it is at once the poorest, most destitute place I've ever seen, but they're the most beautiful and happy people probably in the world. They live right on the water. These are their houses. So the conditions of the village are such that one family of probably at minimum 8 kids would live in a 1-room hut that have the parents. If any of the kids were married, it would be their spouses and kids too. Maybe a chicken or a pig all in that 1 room. But they easily welcomed us right into the community. We were these funny looking outsiders, but we were, from the first time we walked into the village, which is the picture on the upper right, kids were running up to us smiling.
The first 5 minutes. That building right there is the Liliciana Kindy. I wanted to take this moment to talk to you about Everest. He's right over there. He is a 17-year-old boy. He's one of the guys that runs 3 miles every day to go to the morning mass. He is one of 11 kids. He's the second to last, and he lives with all of his brothers and sisters in one of the little huts. He has the biggest heart. He is super talented. He learned how to play the guitar in a year without having his own guitar. He would borrow it from everyone. he has become the new choir master at the cathedral as well as the Lilisiana church, and without a guitar. So what I was really fortunate enough to do was I left my guitar with him. He was very grateful. He gave me this necklace as a sort of thank you for it. But he's one of the guys that has really struck me the most, and I will never forget him and his big heart. And so continuing with that, I got to join them a lot for choir. That's me with George in St. Peter and St. Paul's in Lilisiana. And so every Wednesday night I would go, and we would both go and we would sing with the children. I would be playing the guitar with George and Everest, and we would be having a lot of fun.
Yeah, so they let us be a part of their liturgy and their lives right away. Some of the girls, so during their mass, we haven't even explained how the mass is there. So there's dancing during the masses there. During the part of the offertory, they've found a way to integrate their like tribal and like specific village cultures into the mass, and Bishop Chris has encouraged that. He always says the liturgy is for the people. So there's a dance during the offertory, and all throughout everyone is screaming at the top of their lungs the music. So some of the girls, like the 14, 15-year-old girls, like offered to teach us the dance. So at one of the last masses we were there for, we got to do the offertory dance. A lot of people were laughing. I don't know why. I thought we did a pretty good job. But
Yeah, we were the best. Yeah.
So they let us be a part of their community and their liturgy. And after every mass in Lilisiana, the women who didn't really have, they probably had just enough to feed their families, they'd make a little meal for us for coming to visit them. So Bishop Chris would offer the food that they were offering him to some of the boys, and they open it up to the community and sort of be a resource. And we learned a lot from Bishop Chris, both from Lilisiana and from the rest of his experiences.
So this is Bishop Chris again, being a goofball. He is not only the bishop of Auki, he is one of the biggest friends that these kids have. He is a sort of counselor to them, a guide, a guy that just has a whole bunch of jokes to say, someone who is completely sharing and open with everyone. He gives the people that come to his home asking for food, he gives them biscuits, bananas, a cup of water at any time of the day. And so it was great to see someone who is a bishop, who we see here as someone really high up in the church, being completely humble and sharing and giving to everyone and anyone.
I think he really taught us the idea of not only the Dominican tradition, but also the idea of service, that as a leader, you're there to serve and to lift people up. And I don't think I've ever learned so much from one person. So he taught us both the Dominican idea. So he was a priest, a friend, and he also would he would make different visits to the hospital. So he would take his herd of maybe 30 high school students with him to visit the hospitals, just to go around, make the ill people smile, say a little prayer with them. So we would go on these pastoral visits. And a couple of times, or for a couple of weeks, we went back to this hospital. It's named Kalufi. We'd go back and we'd do a little bit of work that we could to help out there. So Kalufi is the only hospital on the entire island of Malaita, which has about 150,000 people, and there's 3 doctors. I'd say that there's only 1 doctor who really is invested in the hospital. So the conditions are absolutely eye-opening.
So the layout of the hospital is that it has different kind of big halls. One of them each is a ward. So there's a maternity ward, women's ward, men's ward, children's ward. And so we spent a lot of time in the children's ward with one of the doctors there. And it was probably the hardest thing that we've ever experienced. We both want to be doctors. I know personally I want to work with kids in the future. And so seeing them with these illnesses, with tuberculosis, with meningitis, with really really, really intense surgery operations. It was really hard to see them suffer through that with mild pain relief, but also really, I don't know, it really helped to see the end with some of them. Kind of, they were able to get treated and get well, and they were still happy, joyous little kids. They were very resilient. They did not cry. They didn't want to show any pain. They were completely strong.
There was a lot of conditions that we saw that, like, there was one student, a 15-year-old boy. We knew his friends from the high school. We had been seeing him almost every day in the hospital on our rounds when we went to doctors. He passed away one night for a condition that could have easily been treated back here. It could have been treated technically there too, but to really get the treatment he needed, he had to get on a 6-hour ferry, which maybe comes every other day, doesn't really come on schedule, to make it to the main island and then to get transportation there. So it was hard to see things that could have been deaths and illnesses that could have been prevented at home, sort of taking these beautiful people's lives over there. But it was good to see that the doctors and the nurses there are superheroes. They're doing everything that they can, with probably a greater skill than some of the physicians back home, because they have so little resources. So it was really inspiring, and we did what we could to help. But I think the biggest impact that will have on our future careers, and inspiring us to be the kind of doctors that we should be.
Yeah, we can't say how much the people in the Solomon Islands have affected us. If from 2 years old to 60 years old, all of them have kind of touched our hearts in many different ways, and we will never forget them, ever.
And so this was our pictures with the little family. As Father Rob mentioned before, one of the previous Smith Fellows, Ryan Fraser, was there. We got to see him on his way back. It kind of brought our experience full circle, that the Smith Fellowship has had such an unbelievable impact on our lives and on everyone who's been a part of its lives. So we're incredibly thankful for everything everyone in this room has done to support us or make it possible. So thank you. We got one more slide.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Janine. We've passed our allotted hour. If anyone needs to leave for a pressing engagement, you're free to do so now. But if you want to hang around for a few minutes, for questions, I'd invite you to do that too. So anybody need to leave? Oh, this is great. Okay, I want the three of you young ladies to come up here. Okay. Questions? Mr. Mitchell.
For the young lady who was in South Africa,
Molly?
based on what you saw in your time there, what do you think the future holds for the kids that you worked with?
So that is a very hard question to answer for me, because unfortunately the organization there, St. Martin's, it used to be run by volunteers from the church, and when it was run that way, it went much better. But then they lost a lot of funding, a lot of their support, so it turned over into a government-funded organization. And then since then, Brother Dominic has been facing so many obstacles with trying to get enough funding for the kids and for the township, and having to go to the banks and social development for hours and hours and hours almost every day. And thankfully, the donations that my family and friends raised, I gave $2,000 just for them to keep their kitchen, to provide food for them. But as a whole, I pray every day that the organization stays together. But to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how it'll keep going, but hopefully it does.
How about the kids themselves as they grow into young adults?
Well, the kids themselves, they're the most beautiful children ever, and so many of them, like those young girls that were in my pictures, they have such incredible dreams. And just to be teachers, like I was telling them about my brother who's a teacher, and there were these girls that are, that's what I want to do. And I was like, yes, like you can do it. And I do think that there's a lot of history behind it, but it's been 20 years since it's been established as a democracy. And I do have hope that they can hold on to those dreams and that it is a thing that's going to progress upward. Whereas I know some of the older people, like in the caregivers, unfortunately, their struggle was just so hard, and they had been put so much down so much by the apartheid. But I do think that they will have better lives in the future. I hope. And I hope as a social worker in the future, to be honest, I can go back there. Hearing about Ryan Fraser and the Smith Fellows that have gone back to their sites is incredible. And I really hope that one day I can do the same. Thank you.
Anyone else? Richard?
What resources do the people that you were meeting have to know about where you come from or what your background is, the culture of the United States or the college system in the United States? They have, do they have access to films, television, newspapers? How would they know about that?
For us, they had a sort of strange idea of the U.S. culture. There are some films. There's like almost like a Blockbuster where somebody who's probably downloaded a lot of movies illegally will like you can buy them from them sort of. There's an internet cafe that if you pay a certain amount of money, you can get internet for 30 minutes. I think some kids listen to music. Music was big. That way, they had this idea that everyone in the United States was related, just like they were. We got asked if we were related to Miley Cyrus, or how many of our cousins played in the World Cup. I think Bishop Chris knew that there's sort of a poverty in that understanding, so we talked to some of the high school kids. We sort of explained our education system and compared and contrasted, and they were really interested in that. They had different ideas. They thought that because everyone in the United States sort of has, or for the most part, many people have access to higher education, that we didn't have to work very hard, that it was sort of, they kind of had this idea that we all sort of took it for granted, which is probably true of a lot of people, but also not true of many of the people who would do service, many of the kids at this school. So we sort of explained that there was sort of a dialogue back and forth. Do you have anything to add?
It's identical.
Okay.
Questions? Bill?
Thanks, Arthur. I don't have any expertise on the Solomon Islands, but I have been to Haiti, and I follow that country as best I can. And I know the American government has invested, and the American people have invested untold billions of dollars into Haiti. And my experience and my observation and my reading indicates that it doesn't get to the people. And when I was there, it's clearly true that it doesn't get to the people. And I'm wondering if that's also part of the problem in the Solomon Islands and in other emerging nations, that Americans in the Western world are very, very generous, but the pipeline just doesn't come out where it should come out.
Yeah, so there were a couple of instances where that's kind of happened, not necessarily with the US, but with Australia. So there's a program in Australia that's trying to help out some of the schools in the Solomons, and they sent like boxes and boxes of books one time, and the Smith Fellows of that year came to see that those boxes weren't even unpacked. They weren't, the library was not set up at all, and so they took it upon themselves to set it up for them. So there is kind of a miscommunication with that. There's also the problem of outsiders coming in and not completely understanding the culture, not understanding how the Solomon Islanders work, because they're completely different. Their culture is completely different, and so the help needs to kind of be assimilated to that. They can't just come in and do everything and not teach the Solomon Islanders, when they'll probably just leave and the project will collapse.
There was also one instance where we saw that actually FIFA had donated a large amount of money to build a soccer stadium at the high school, and what we saw there was not a soccer stadium, it was a field, a poorly maintained field. So I kept asking a number of times, where did the rest of the money go? Like, where's the stadium? Nobody really knew. It was kind of just a joke. Yeah, one of the physician we shadowed spoke a lot to us about this. He said, as Janine mentioned, that the main issue is either giving the money to them and leaving, or giving it and doing it all for them, and then the Solomon Islanders feel no ownership of it. So it really has to be a partnership. That's something we learned.
Anyone else? I thank you, ladies. Thank you for putting up with me for a year. Thank you for your willingness to enter into what is a fair amount of work to be awarded a Smith Fellowship, and, for putting your heart and your soul, into your experience and coming back and telling us about it. I want to thank all of you for coming this afternoon. I hope that you found what you heard to be not only interesting, but challenging. And I once again do thank, Smith Fellow donors who are here, because if we didn't have donors to the program, we wouldn't have the program. So God bless you all, and thank you.